Hello out there, you wonderful people. This is Andre, the Game Idea Guy. Thank you once again for lending me your time and your ear listening into another Gamer's Thoughts discussion. And this was a question that I had posed on Twitter yesterday, at the time I'm recording this. And I asked this question briefly. Now, this is something that is probably going to require a little bit of thought on a lot of people's parts, but you'll understand where I'm going once I get the ball rolling on this. But why didn't Sony and Microsoft move to cartridges this generation versus sticking to Blu-rays as a format for carrying games on? Now, somebody will say, well, because Blu-ray has more storage capacity. That is incorrect. Currently, micro SDs and SD cards, SDXC, exceeds what a Blu-ray is capable of holding. And as we all know, even though they are not the same shape, the Nintendo Switch cartridges are based on that technology. Now you'll say, but the the carts are more expensive than Blu-rays. Not by much. Not by much at all. And for companies to be purchasing them, it's negligible at best. It's not a big difference. It wouldn't be a costly difference, and the games are going to be more expensive now as it is anyway. So that excuse don't fly. So, why not make the change to cartridges? But then you'd have people say, well, then they couldn't support full backwards compatibility. Well, firsthand, Sony doesn't anyway, and also Microsoft doesn't anyway. Microsoft's backwards compatibility support is very spotty. Well, yes, they do have a lot to offer, but it is very spotty. And for Sony, they're only going to be going back one generation anyway. And to be honest, a lot of people own their games digitally anyhow, so physical backwards compatibility wouldn't be the priority at all. Like, they could also set up a method for people to have a disc-based model and a non-disc-based model anyway, which they've already done. And they could still have the cartridge slot available. It's really only having a slot open, a small slot open, where you can insert the card. So, again, does it make much sense? Because here are the positives to having it based on cartridges, or based on a micro SD type of format where they could make their own proprietary cards out of that. The storage space available is higher now, on average. On top of that, the read and write speeds are faster, so it would fit in line with what they're doing. And on top of that, SD cards could, depending on where they placed it in their console, could almost directly write right to the memory, which would speed everything up anyhow, which was the whole purpose behind the SSDs. So, if they combine those two ideas, they'd make their games run and load even faster, which is what everybody wants. So, not seeing a whole lot of negatives here. But then you could argue and say, well, if they did that, then they wouldn't be able to play Blu-rays and other disc formats. So, yeah, fine. I understand that. But there are discless versions of these systems anyway. So, again, moot point. So, there are a lot of benefits and not a whole lot of negatives to them doing this. I mean, they've changed up a lot of the stuff between their platforms anyway. So why not give consumers the availability, one, to be able to play their games directly off the cart, two, to save storage space on their systems, three, not have to cost as much money to the end user in the long run. Yeah, it'll cost a slight bit more up front. But here's the thing to think about. You won't have to spend money on a proprietary SSD for Microsoft, and you wouldn't have to go through the trouble of trying to hunt out a compatible SSD for Sony to expand your memory. And hey, you wouldn't have to worry about all of the data being shoehorned into a hard drive that then has to be moved from a hard drive to the SSD inside the console in order for the game to be played directly off of it. Current gen games anyway. Well, their current gen games anyway. Last gen doesn't matter. But there's a lot of bonuses to this. And not a whole lot of negatives. So they probably should have done that. Because in the long run, again, it costs the end user very little money in comparison to what they're doing right now. Well, not very little, but it costs less money. I can't say very little because these are expensive platforms. But it costs them less money. So, and thinking of it that way, carts would last longer. Again, they could play right off the cart, right to the system memory. There's less upkeep for them. They could make their packaging smaller, which would cut down costs of the packaging. There's just a lot of benefit there. And actually having the physical medium would mean something. Because again, you'd still have the game there to play. And you didn't have to worry about a disc spinning because that's the reason that disk drives are a problem. Disk spinning, it wears down the drive. So, I mean, I have a bunch of questions, and I do have logical reason as to why carts would have worked over going back to disk. But I don't have logical reason as to why carts wouldn't work. But hey, tongue-tied there. But maybe someone has an answer that logically works against what I'm talking about outside of it being a little bit more costly up front. Because that's the only real negative I see here. And it's not even that big of a cost difference. So, I mean, it's totally up to Microsoft and Sony if they were to do something like this. But to me, if we're worried about things running faster and being quicker and all of that, and you have technology out that already has an increased speed that could help cut down on the load times and help with speeding up the process of games loading and assets being rendered and all of that, why not use it? Instead of making people have to go through the process of having to install the game from a disc, and as if the whole game is even on the disc, to be able to play it. And it's also worse with when they let games partially load and you get to start them up. Heck, if the whole game wasn't even on the cart, you could still have enough of the game on there to get it started. And the rest could download in the background. I mean, I know that would be a janky way of doing it, but that's something that could be done. So you could literally just pop your cartridge in there, play the game, and it says, well, this bit of information has to be downloaded, it's not on the cartridge. Okay, cool, but you can play the game right now. Awesome. I see it working more positively than negatively. To me, it's like, you guys really missed the ball there. You had an opportunity to do something with something of yours that you just said, nah, we're not going to do that. I mean, hey, if they're going to be charging you more for the games anyway, why not charge you more at least to your benefit? That would make more sense to me. And I think it would make more sense to a lot of people if they sat down and really thought it out. Because we're definitely away from the days, or at least I hope we're away from the days where people think that the storage medium affects the graphics of the game. I remember those days back during the PS2. Well, it's on a disc because it looks better on a disc. Like the disc doesn't really affect the system's quality output. It's a capacity thing. And back then, disc made far more sense. Nowadays, they make far less sense, no matter what format of disc you're talking about. But I don't know. I don't think there's a whole lot more to really talk about with this. It's just my opinions and what I thought and what I think makes more sense. But you guys feel free to give your input, no matter where you hear this, whether you hear it on Anchor, any other podcasting platform, or when you hear it on Google. Not Google, YouTube. I mean, it will be on Google Podcasts, but when you hear it on YouTube, let me know what you think. But that's it from me. Thank you guys very much for listening. Keep your eyes and ears out for more stuff from me. And until the next time, enjoy your games and peace out.